Why do bad people seem to succeed? Think about it. Those who break the rules often rise to the top, while the good ones struggle. Is success about playing by the rules, or is there something deeper at play? Enter Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher who challenged everything we know about morality and power. Nietzsche argued that the bad people, the ruthless, the ambitious, the rule breakers, might be the ones who understand success best. In this video, we'll explore why Nietzsche believed that traditional morality might be the very thing holding us back, and why those we label bad often rise to the top. Ready to rethink everything you know about success? Let's dive in. Chapter 1. Nietzsche's rejection of traditional morality. To understand why some bad people succeed, we must first explore Friedrich Nietzsche's deep and compelling critique of traditional morality, particularly in Western civilization. For centuries, moral systems in the West have been dominated by religious and philosophical influences, notably Christianity, and the ideas emerging from Enlightenment thought. These systems had elevated virtues such as humility, self-sacrifice, altruism, meekness, and the welfare of the collective. Goodness, in this sense, is often equated with sacrificing personal desires and ambitions for the greater good of society and acting in the interest of others. Nietzsche, however, had profound objections to this framework. In his seminal work on the genealogy of morals, he contends that these moral values were not divinely ordained or natural, but were instead constructed by the weaker, more vulnerable members of society, those who lacked power or dominance. He named this moral framework slave morality, and it becomes a cornerstone of his critique. Slave morality arises from the resentment and frustration of those who are oppressed, powerless, or unable to assert themselves in society. Faced with their inability to compete with stronger individuals, the weak create a morality that is designed to protect their interest and ensure their survival. In this moral system, traits like humility, meekness, and empathy are exalted as virtues because they enable the weak to coexist within a society dominated by stronger forces. These values serve to disarm the powerful, presenting a moral code that values submission and passivity rather than assertiveness and strength. In stark contrast, Nietzsche identifies the morality of the strong, those who possess power, confidence, and assertiveness. He refers to this as master morality, where the strong define good in terms of self-assertion, creativity, and the ability to impose their will on the world. For those who embody master morality, power is not something to be ashamed of or hidden. Rather, it is the natural expression of life itself. Nietzsche saw this as a more authentic morality, one that celebrates individual sovereignty and greatness rather than promoting meekness and humility. Thus, Nietzsche's rejection of traditional morality is not merely a critique of its content, but also an attack on the underlying power dynamics that shape these moral systems. Slave morality, according to Nietzsche, is designed to protect the weak by shifting the focus of morality away from strength and self-assertion, instead glorifying passivity and submission. Chapter 2. The Will to Power. Redefining Success. Central to Nietzsche's philosophy is his concept of the will to power, which he saw as the fundamental driving force in all living beings. This drive is not simply about achieving material wealth or fame, but is a deeper, more existential force that propels individuals to grow, overcome challenges, and assert their will upon the world. For Nietzsche, the will to power is the expression of a life force that strives for dominance, self-overcoming, and the creation of new possibilities. It is an instinct for self-mastery and personal transformation. Success, then, is no longer defined by external measures such as wealth, fame, or societal approval. Instead, it is determined by one's ability to assert the will to power. This means living authentically, following one's own desires and ambitions, and rejecting the moral frameworks that limit personal freedom and self-expression. Success, in Nietzsche's view, is about the ability to shape one's life on one's own terms, without succumbing to the expectations or norms dictated by others. The key to understanding why bad people, those who reject traditional morality, often rise to the top, lies in their willingness to embrace the will to power. These individuals are unafraid to challenge the status quo, to break free from the shackles of conventional moral expectations. They prioritize self-dominion over collective approval, and in doing so, they often achieve influence, control, and power. The so-called bad people are those who only operate outside the boundaries of conventional morality, and they often succeed precisely because they are willing to break the rules in order to impose their will on the world. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, or overman, is crucial here. The Übermensch represents the ideal of the individual who transcends conventional morality and creates their own values. The Übermensch lives by their own code, asserting their will to power and pushing beyond societal expectations. In this sense, the Übermensch embodies Nietzsche's vision of ultimate success, not in the eyes of others, but through the power and sovereignty of the self. The Übermensch is an individual who rises above the herd, shaping reality according to their unique perspective and will. Chapter 3. Master-Slave Morality, the Power Dynamics at Play. These two opposing moral systems illustrate the relationship between the strong and the weak, and they highlight the different ways in which power dynamics shape human behavior and societal success. Master morality is the morality of the strong, the powerful, and the creative. Individuals who adhere to master morality define their values based on their desires and their lived experiences. For them, what is good is anything that enhances life, affirms their power, and allows them to grow and flourish. Traits such as strength, independence, creativity, and courage are highly valued. These individuals see power not as something to be ashamed of, but as an expression of their vital life force. They do not feel guilt for asserting their will over others because they view their strength as a natural and noble aspect of their existence. In contrast, slave morality is born from the resentment and powerlessness of those who are unable to assert their will over others. Those who adhere to slave morality elevate values like humility, meekness, and selflessness as virtues. Power and strength are vilified, while weakness is valorized. Slave morality is, in essence, a moral system designed to ensure the survival of the weak in a world dominated by the strong. It's a response to oppression and the inversion of the values of the powerful. Where the masters affirm strength and creativity, the slaves affirm meekness and submission. Understanding this framework helps explain why bad people, those who reject or manipulate traditional moral codes, often succeed. While modern society may favor the values of slave morality, such as empathy, equality, and humility, Nietzsche's analysis suggests that power dynamics are not always determined by moral virtue. The individuals who operate according to master morality, those who embrace strength, creativity, and self-assertion, are often the ones who rise to the top. Their success does not come from being good in the traditional sense, but from their ability to assert their power, defy societal norms, and impose their own values on the world. Chapter 4. The Corruption of the Weak, How Society Perpetuates Mediocrity. Nietzsche was deeply critical of modern society and its emphasis on equality, collective welfare, and the elevation of virtues like compassion and humility. In his view, these values serve to reward mediocrity while stifling greatness. When a society places a premium on collective welfare and moral equality, it creates an environment where the weak thrive while the strong are often held back. Modern society, in Nietzsche's view, encourages the flourishing of the weak, those who can manipulate social structures to their advantage, while suppressing the creativity and excellence of the truly great individuals. The person who rises to the top in such a society is not necessarily the one with the most talent or the highest ideals, but the one who knows how to navigate the system and manipulate it to their advantage. In other words, those who excel in the values of slave morality, such as empathy, selflessness, and humility, are often rewarded, while those who strive to assert their will and break free from moral constraints are marginalized. This dynamic creates a society that is more conducive to mediocrity than greatness. Nietzsche argued that by elevating the weak and the meek, modern society stifles the will of power and denies the potential of the truly creative and ambitious. Those who succeed in such a society are often those who have learned to navigate the system of collective morality, even at the cost of their own personal greatness. Chapter 5. The Role of Genius and Creativity in Success. For Nietzsche, creativity and genius represent the highest expressions of the will to power. The truly successful individuals, those who change the course of history, revolutionize industries, or create enduring works of art, are the ones who dare to break free from conventional moral boundaries. These individuals embody the will to power by imposing their will on the world, by reshaping their environment, and by bringing something new into existence. Creativity is not limited to artistic endeavors. It's the ability to reshape one's life and reality according to one's own vision. Successful individuals are those who have the courage to transcend mediocrity and craft their own path, regardless of whether they're seen as good or bad. In this way, the successful person is not necessarily one who adheres to societal norms or moral codes, but one who's willing to break them in order to assert their dominance and achieve greatness. In Nietzsche's view, success is ultimately about self-realization. It is about transcending the moral limitations imposed by society and creating something of profound value. Those who succeed are not afraid to challenge existing norms, dominate their environment, and push the boundaries of what is considered acceptable. In doing so, they reshape the world in ways that the morally inclined cannot. So, why do bad people succeed? According to Nietzsche, it's because they embrace their will to power. They reject the moral constraints imposed by traditional systems and pursue greatness on their own terms. Success, in Nietzsche's philosophy, is not about being good or virtuous in the eyes of society, but about asserting one's will, pushing boundaries, and creating new values. The people who rise to power, influence, and success are often those who reject the conventional moral order and embrace their own principles. They shift the world by their will to power, often creating new possibilities and reshaping society in ways that others cannot. These bad people succeed not because they conform to traditional moral norms, but because they're willing to break free from these norms and live authentically, asserting their dominance in the world. In the end, Nietzsche's philosophy challenges us to rethink our ideas about success and morality. Success is not about conforming to the moral expectations of society. It's about living authentically, asserting your will to power, and creating your own values, even if that means defying traditional norms. Those who can do this, the so-called bad people, are often the ones who succeed and leave a lasting impact on the world.